Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about some of the classics that I would hopefully like to read at some point in the future. Now, I have a very tricky relationship with classics because I do struggle with them, and I think a lot of people struggle with them. And it's mainly to do with the language and the writing because a lot of them were written, in the early 1900s, the 1800s, even further back. And so, the writing language, the styles are very, very different to what I'm used to now. There are a lot of words that I don't understand. And so I do struggle to get into them sometimes. I do struggle to mesh with them. Now, that's not saying that I have a complete dislike for classics, because I don't. One of my favourite books in the world is a classic. It's Dracula. I absolutely adore that book. That is one that I really connected with and still connect with when I read it now. It's just, I haven't found the right classics for me. But there are classics out there that I would like to read, classics that I'm really, really interested in and are about things that I enjoy in all of the current books that I'm reading. So, I keep an open mind when it comes to reading and I like to try new things. So I am hoping that these are books that I am going to enjoy in the future. All 6 of these books were written in the 1900s. Some of them I think are considered modern classics, and I think that's kind of where I'm probably gonna find my niche for classics, the things that I enjoy. But we'll see. Anyway, without further ado, we're just going to get straight into the list. So, the first book that I'm going to talk about is 1984 by George Orwell. Everyone knows this book, and I have attempted to read this book in the past before. I do vaguely remember picking it up when I was quite young, like my early teens, something like that, because this is one of those books that I was never forced to read it in school. We never really read any kind of classics and that in school. A lot of that was more to do with Shakespeare, which I hated. But this was a book that a lot of my friends had read, and so I kind of wanted to, jump on that bandwagon, but I never quite got there. But this is one that still really appeals to me just because of the concept and all of the themes. So this one is set in a dystopian world, and it is described as a social science fiction novel. And this is set in a world where there is a lot of heavy surveillance going on. There is this Big Brother type entity that is monitoring everything that people do and say, where they go, who they see. And there is also this thing in the book called the Thought Police, and the Thought Police are basically there to prevent thought crimes. So if you are thinking about something that is against government policy or what you have been told to do, you can be arrested for that, and probably worse. And it's kind of reminiscent of the world that we are currently or have currently been living in. Obviously not that extreme, but with all of the restrictions that we have had to cope with because of the C word virus that has been going around, it has kind of felt a little bit Orwellian in the sense that you can't leave your house unless it's for certain things. You can't see people, you can't come into contact with anyone, you can't go to work, you can't do this, and it has just been a little bit 1984, but not that extreme. So we've been quite lucky. But this is a novel that just really, really interests me. A lot of the topics that it talks about, like totalitarianism, did I say that right? Mass surveillance, and repressive regimentation of people and society. It just sounds really, really interesting, and I would like to see what this kind of world looks like. This was like George Orwell's prediction of what the world might look like in the 80s, and he wasn't far off. Things are becoming a little bit like he predicted, I guess. I don't know, but it'll just be really interesting to read that. And I know that this book was very inspired by Stalin Russia and the Soviet Union and things like that. So this one has just always really interested me, and hopefully I can get to this soon. This is on my my book bucket list, if you like. But yeah, I need to read this one because I do feel like I'm missing out with it. The next one that I'm going to talk about is also another book by George Orwell, and that is Animal Farm. This one sounds really fun, but again, it's another book that is inspired a little bit by the Soviet Union and by Stalin Russia, and it is about this farm of animals, mainly pigs, who rebel against their farmer and run the farm as they want it to be run. And it's all about animals having equal rights and things like that, but then things don't go to plan, and one of the pigs becomes a bit kind of extreme, shall we say. He's called Napoleon, and he basically becomes the dictator of the farm, and it just sounds really fun. Such an interesting way to portray this kind of concept of rebellions against governments, against a higher power, and what would happen in that kind of event. And yeah, like, this is another one that has been on my radar for such a long time. George Orwell is considered one of the best political satire writers, so I'm really interested to see how his satire is done in these books. I love satire, especially political satire, so this one is another one that is right up my street, and I've heard that it is also very similar to 1984 in the themes that it talks about, and in the way that it's written, and it kind of represents Orwell's bleak vision of humanity and the future. And yeah, like, I'm excited for this one. Next we have another dystopian science fiction novel. You can see a theme here, guys, but this is Brave New World. I am very intrigued by this one, and I know a show has come out quite recently. It's an adaptation of A Brave New World, but I've been holding off on that because I do really want to read this book. This is another one that is a look into the future. It's set in like 2500 and something AD. Something like that, so very far out into the future. But this is set in a futuristic world state where people are environmentally engineered into an intelligent-based social hierarchy. So they're kind of separated based on their intelligence and other things like wealth and race and sexuality and stuff like that, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but that's the kind of vibes that I'm getting from it. And this book talks a lot about scientific advancements that could happen in the future, like reproductive technology, sleep learning, psychological manipulation, things like that, classical conditioning, and it's challenged by the book's main protagonist. So there are people in the world who are natural born citizens, people who are born via the natural way of reproduction, and they're considered savages. And one of these protagonists in the story realise that, and then they kind of challenge the world that they are living in, and it just sounds really, really interesting. I know I use that word a lot, but it's true. This is a very appealing book to me, not just because of the themes of it, but also because it was very heavily censored in certain countries when it came out. And books that have been banned for whatever reason, books that have been censored, really appeal to me because I want to know why they were censored. I love things that are a bit controversial, a little bit close to the bone. I enjoy those kind of things. I know that this book was censored in Ireland because of the language that it uses, and also because it challenges religious beliefs. You know, they thought it was like anti-religious or something, and then I know it was also banned in India at one point because they considered it to be sexually explicit. So there's lots of reasons why this book was censored, and yeah, like I said, that just really appeals to me. Alright, so next up we have The Master and Margarita, and this is a Russian classic. This was written during the time of the Soviet Union and the Stalin era, I think. You can see a theme here. A lot of these books are inspired by Stalin or the Soviet Union, Russia, things like that. But this one is all about the devil who rocks up in the Soviet Union, and he has a cat with him, a hitman with him, and a female vampire with him. And that's basically all I know about it, but I know that it's set into it's got two settings. So the first setting is Soviet Russia, and then the second setting is Jerusalem, and it has something to do with Pontius Pilate and his trial of Jesus of Nazareth. And this one kind of talks a lot about religion and the interplay of good and evil, and innocence and guilt, and courage and cowardice. It's also described as a satirical, dark comedy novel, which again sounds right up my street. And this book also has themes of love and sensuality and sexuality within it. So this is just a mixture of everything that I feel like I would enjoy, and I have heard really, really good things about this. I do know a few people who have read The Master and Margarita and have really enjoyed it and have recommended it to me. So hopefully I can get to this one soon as well. It sounds like the perfect kind of Halloween read. I don't know, I'm just getting those vibes because, you know, the devil and a black cat and a vampire, three things that I love in stories. So we'll see with this one. Please let me know if you read it, because I would love to hear your opinions. Then we have Dune by Frank Herbert, and oh boy, this is a very chunky book, and I know that this is the first book in a series of books set in this world, and I'm a little bit intimidated by it, I'm not gonna lie. This is one of those books that I have been wanting to read for such a long time, but yeah, like I said, it intimidates me, so I've been putting it off. But I know the film is coming out soon, and I know that I'm not going to get to the book before the film. But yeah, it's sci-fi, it's set in space, things that I love, so I feel like I would enjoy this one. I have heard from people that it's kind of slow and hard to get into. I've also heard that it's actually soft sci-fi and not hard sci-fi, which I find hard to believe, but you know, I won't know until I read it. This one is essentially set in the very distant future, thousands and thousands of years in the future actually, and it's in a, what does it say here? It says a feudal interstellar society in which various noble houses control planetary fiefs? I don't know, I've been reading off my phone for a lot of these, if you can't tell. But this one follows a guy called Paul whose family accept the stewardship of this planet, and this planet is kind of like the only place where this drug called the spice is grown, and that kind of sets the story up for this war or something that takes place where a lot of members of the empire try to gain control of this planet in order to have access to this drug, essentially. But I have heard that this book is inspired by Islamic culture. I might have got that wrong, but I did read that somewhere. But also, one of the things that really interests me about this book is that Paul is inspired by the Arthurian legend and the figure of King Arthur. So I love the Arthurian legend and I love King Arthur. I find those stories really fascinating. So that's just an added bonus, and I'll be very interested to see how that inspiration is fed into the story, whether I can notice it or not. And also I know that this book doesn't feature the technology of the future of the world that much, and that was deliberate because the author wanted to focus more on the human aspects of the world, of the characters, of the story, than the technological aspects that you would get in sci-fi novels. And I feel like I would love that. Don't get me wrong, I do like reading about the futuristic technology and things that you get in sci-fi novels, but my brain just can't comprehend that sometimes, and I do find it very difficult to read about and to picture. So having that kind of not be too much of a thing in a sci-fi novel just ticks another box for me. I don't know with this one, like I said, it's very intimidating. So I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but it's on my list, and if you guys can persuade me to read it soon, then I will read it soon. And lastly, we have American Psycho, and this is probably the most controversial book that I have on this list. But this is one that I have been wanting to pick up for quite a long time, and I first got whiff of it when I was in a bookshop with a friend years and years ago, and they said they'd read it and it was really fucked up. And that they said that I should avoid it. I'm one of those people, I'm like, I want to know why I should avoid it. And I've looked into this book a lot online, and yeah, like I can understand why this book is very controversial. So this book is about Norman Bateman, who is an investment banker. He's young, he's wealthy, he's also a serial killer. And he gets up to a lot of very shady shit, things that aren't very nice. And this book has been banned in a lot of countries for a lot of different reasons. And for that reason alone, I just want to read it. Like I said, I love controversial stuff. I love really dark stuff because, not that I condone any of that. I don't support any of those things. But I'm interested in the psychological side of it. I'm interested in the people that commit those crimes. I like to find out why they commit those crimes. It's just this kind of weird fascination that I have with death and crime and things like that, which I think a lot of people have. They're just scared to admit to it. But yeah, this one sounds very interesting. So the themes in this book vary massively, but a lot of them talk about things like capitalism and how that affects society, material gain and superficial appearances, why people want what they want and what they would do to get it, that kind of thing. It also talks about the sexualization and objectification of women and violence against women, which is something that is still very relevant to today's world. And this book also has the unreliable narrator trope, which I love when it's done well. And I've heard that it is done very well in this book. So I'm very excited for this one. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it 100%, but I feel like I will. So we will see. Anyway guys, those are 6 classics I would like to read in the near future. Please let me know if you've read any of the books that I've talked about in today's video and what you thought of them, because as always I love to hear your feedback and opinions. I am going to wrap this video up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video, and please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me in the future, and I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.